Which Miami Hurricanes have raised their stock heading into this rivalry matchup with Florida State?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hate Week continues. Miami Hurricanes and Florida State Seminoles this Saturday, 7 p.m. at Hard Rock Stadium. I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and co-host of Locked On ACC. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It's not just a Tuesday, it's a Truth Teller Tuesday here on Locked On Canes, as we have the man Bruce Warner with us. And Bruce, we'll talk about Miami players who have raised their stock, some players and units who have lowered their stock. But in terms of stock going up, Truth Teller, it's not just some players who have raised it. A certain head coach has raised his stock this year as well.
Yeah, I thought about something yesterday, and I wrote it down, and then I discussed it with you. And I think it's about time it comes out. Listen, we've got a great fan base here on your show that I'm privileged to be on Tuesdays. And so, and again, later on, I'm going to be on, King Sport Live with Gary. So I just thought it's about time. If people don't agree with me, it's okay, but it's just my opinion. And as the truth teller, I always say what I believe, whether people like it or not. So my comment is, I'm sending congratulations to Coach Mario Cristobal for completely, and I'm sorry that I'm reading this because I can't memorize all this, completely turning this lost and irrelevant football program around after 2 decades of lackluster and inconsistent performances. Not that they've been that consistent this year. Certainly, I am also guilty of gross negativity during that period of time and guilty of criticisms, warranted or not. However, any true blue Hurricane fan that doesn't see and feel the level of excitement and the increased level of talent that he is infused into this team is either a fool or not a real Miami Hurricane fan, just a miserable complainer. When was the last time Miami has constantly been talked about by the national media like this, right? Doesn't it feel great to walk into work or a store or a restaurant wearing Canes gear and just having that little smirk on your face?
The one on my face right now.
Yeah, and when I went on that cruise a few weeks ago, the day after we beat the Gators, I had a smirk for 7 days. Of course, nobody knows what's going to happen next and how we finish this season. I get that. It wasn't that long ago that people were complaining about Mario's overpaid and his ability to win big games was questioned. Just like the knee thing from last year, I get it. But I want to personally thank Mario, and I'm going to do it Friday when I go down there with Caesar because it's homecoming for the former players. I want to thank him for his tunnel vision dedication and tireless hours of work to bringing this program back to national prominence, and for all of us to be proud once again to be Miami Hurricane fans. I would like to think most of you guys who watch and or listen to this Locked On Canes show with Alex Dono, with or without me, appreciate how much Mario means to this community and to this school. Mario, I think I speak for all Canes fans when I say thank you, thank you, thank you. It's great to be a Miami Hurricane.
I love that. Opinion. I love it. I love it. And
I'm tired of all the complaining. And I'm a big, that everybody, Mr. Negativity. I'm not saying we're going to win the title, but he has changed this around in 2.5 seasons. That's how I feel.
And the excitement. I love what you said about and the national media won't stop talking about Miami. And even if it's a lot of negative stuff about they're stealing games and this call and that call, I don't care. I want to be talked about. I don't care if Miami's loved or hated. In fact, I probably prefer Miami to be hated. There's something that's extra fun about that. and to add on to your awesome statement on Mario, I want to send a special thank you to new university president, who of course has been heavily involved for the last few years, even when he was under Dr. Julio Frank, but Joe Echeverria, because Mario Cristobal even mentioned in his media conference on Monday, he said, I wouldn't be here if not for Joe. I mean, Joe was the one who really made the biggest push from the administration behind the scenes to make sure that they got Mario here, to put that kind of investment into football.
Yeah,
and
I
athletics.
agree. Thank him too.
Absolutely. So no question, Mario has raised his stock. Bruce, it's Florida State week. We're going to talk on this episode about what that means to us and what it hopefully means to the players who are going to be taking the field on Saturday. We will talk about the defensive back issues because you had a conversation and you and I both had a conversation with former Miami DB Charles Farms about that yesterday.
Yeah.
We're going to talk personnel and injury notes on this episode. In terms of, Bruce, who else has raised their stock heading into this game? Zaquan Patterson, Simeon Barrow, a couple players.
Well, Barrow's obvious. Simeon Barrow's obvious. Listen, again, I don't want to keep harping. I don't want to keep patting myself, but whatever. I said for the last 2 years, we need a D tackle that can get up the field and create problems in the backfield. Every game for the last 2 years has been the ball snapped and our linemen are just like colliding, but there's nobody getting up the field. He's in the backfield constantly.
Yeah.
And that's what we've needed all along. We need to continue to develop guys like that because that's the way it used to be. Have to have that.
Yeah, Simeon Barrow, like he's playing the way we all wanted Leonard Taylor to play for the past few years.
That's correct.
We're actually getting it from Barrow. I mean, he's been good all season. Against Louisville this past weekend, had a sack, 2.5 tackles for loss, a forced fumble that turned into that touchdown. By the way, another defender raising his stock, Popo Aguirre, the linebacker who dove on that ball for the touchdown. His stock is going up. Yeah, I mentioned Zaquan Patterson, Bruce, who, he's young. He's obviously not like a guy taking over games or anything, but in a defense, especially a defensive backfield that's struggling, this guy is trending towards more playing time. Zaquan Patterson.
They've already said he's going to get it. Yeah, I think Sam Brown has upped his game. Really. And I think AJ Allen, for the little spurt he got in there, has upped his game because now I know Mario mentioned him. He's going to get in the game on Saturday. Whereas sometimes he'd sit out. I think he's deserving of more time. So those are my few: Sam Brown, Barrow, and AJ Allen.
Yeah, AJ Allen, Mario said about him on Monday, he's running angry and getting downhill. He's made the most of every rep that he's gotten this season. Bruce had a big fourth quarter touchdown against Louisville. You mentioned Sam Brown. That was his best game as a Hurricane on Saturday. 3 receptions, 125 yards and a touchdown. And he showed off his explosiveness, his shiftiness, his ability to break tackles, because there was that one long reception he had. I think there were like 2 or 3 broken Louisville tackles on that one play when he got by the entire defense. And Sam Brown was named ACC Wide Receiver of the Week. So that was a big honor for him. And you know what's funny? Speaking of Wide Receiver of the Week, and I'm not taking anything away from Sam Brown, what he did this past game, but there's another Miami receiver, Bruce, Xavier Restrepo.
He's never gotten it.
He's never gotten it, which
he's never gotten it.
He leads the ACC in receiving, 686 receiving yards. Restrepo leads the entire ACC. He's second in touchdowns with 6 on the year. He's behind only Ja'Cory Brooks from Louisville, who's got 8 touchdowns. But Restrepo, he leads the conference in receiving. Somehow, he's never been named ACC Receiver of the Week. Let's get some justice here for X.
Listen, I think he'll take what's happening on the field for the team, and he's going to be breaking records again for the individuals at Miami.
Yeah.
That's better than the ACC as far as I'm concerned. And as long as they're winning, I don't know if he really cares about that. You know,
that's right. Yeah.
That's not going to help him get into the draft. That's for sure.
By the way, speaking of as long as you're winning, I appreciate I haven't really seen anybody on this team like boasting about their personal stats or anything like that. This entire group is really humble. Because something I've noticed, Bruce, out there, because like right now, and this can change throughout the year. It's fluid every week. But right now, the top 3 Heisman Trophy front runners, Cam Ward, of course, who had another big game, 319 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's been great this year. Travis Hunter, the two-way star from Colorado, and
But he got
Ashton
hurt.
Genty.
But he got hurt.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And Ashton Genty, the running back, those have been like the top 3 guys in recent weeks. And something I've noticed, Bruce, like Travis Hunter has been doing interviews where he's like campaigning for the Heisman and talking about why he's better, why he has a better case than Genty. And then Genty responds, making his case. You know who's not campaigning for an individual award, who's focused on his team?
Cam Ward.
He's not public, he's not public. This guy just wants to win games. Every time he has success, he puts it on his teammates, right? He was asked to describe his own play this year. He called it mid. So, I mean, instead of campaigning for the Heisman, Ward is focusing on winning games when you got the other Heisman finalists are talking about why they should win the award. I appreciate the mentality of Ward.
Yeah, well, a problem for all these guys that are talking about it and these media people and the ESPNs and so on. Cam Ward is more than just 300 yards a game and 20-something touchdowns. Every time, not every time, but most of the time when he takes off, he's getting the first down. He's doing things that other quarterbacks just can't do, and how he reads the defense and he makes incredible plays. I could see Hunter because he's playing both ways. That hasn't happened in a long, long time. So maybe he deserves it, but I don't. But Cam Ward is just, to me, he's the clear favorite to win the Heisman Trophy because all the things he does, both on and off the field, he's the leader. He's the vocal leader. He's the leader by example of why these guys are so focused. And then you look at 35-10 deficit against Cal when they came back to win. Who does that? Who does that individually? Not Travis Hunter and not the running back. No way. He's amazing. Point. And I think most people that have some football sense will realize he's clearly the most important player in college football this year.
Well, we have a lot more to get to on this episode of Locked On Canes, including, conversation that Bruce and I had with a former Hurricanes defensive back about the DB issues, fixable, and what has to happen to make sure that we get less of these coverage breakdowns, because that could be the Achilles heel for as great as the offense has been and the defensive line has been making plays, creating pressure. The defensive backfield has been an issue so far. There's been some stock down in that regard. So
when we come back, though, I want the quote. I'm going to give the quote that he gave us. And we can ask all our guests, all the viewers and the listeners to answer the question that CP raised to me. So let's go to the spot. Go ahead.
I like it. That's coming up right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. So excited again. We do this every Tuesday, and I love it. It's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week on the Miami Hurricanes. And so far this season, we've pooled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player you choose. You know exactly where your support is going on Roy, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, we're supporting Damian Martinez. What a performance. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Damian Martinez, who had his breakout game as a Hurricane, angry runs, dragging tacklers down the field, scored the 30-yard game-winning touchdown. Damian Martinez is our Roy Player of the Week. Let's show him the love, keep him connected to Miami. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets up your team for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter referral code LOCKEDON, and you're entered. If you're already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return_on_you for more info. Thank you so much for making this Truth Teller Tuesday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So yesterday afternoon, I get a call from Bruce Warner, and then he conference calls in former Miami Hurricanes defensive back from the Dennis Erickson years, Charles Farms, CP. We call him, and CP keeps very close track of what Miami's doing. He's as invested as Bruce and I are watching these games, and he also has the insight of being a former player. So what were some of the highlights, Bruce, when CP was helping us, diagnose some of the defensive back errors, all the big plays that they've been giving up?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm sitting around yesterday and I'm thinking, what are we going to talk about today? And everybody's talking about the secondary. So I said, let me just call a couple of my friends and see. So I first got a call was Charles Farms because, we're close. So, and yeah, he's CP. I'm B-Dub. We got to get you a nickname. Everybody's got that. AD? I don't know.
Why not?
They'll come up with something.
I can tell you don't like that one. They're like, they'll come up with something.
No, it's not me. Those guys make up the names. I don't know. You heard Melvin Bratton call me B-Dub. So anyway, he starts talking to me, and then he makes this comment. And I said, okay, hold on. I got to call Alex because I started out with him. And then I said, he said, okay. So I call you up. And here's the question that he asked me, and I got you on the phone, and you heard it. So how is it that these guys practice against the most prolific offense in the country and they can't get any better? How can that be? I would love to hear comments. They're going every day during the week against this great offense and they're not improving. The coaches aren't able to correct these mistakes. He was bewildered. I'm bewildered. I'm guessing you are too.
I am. Now, it's something, Cristobal was asked about it yesterday, and he mentioned that it's not like, because he was asked like how concerned the coaching staff is about it. And he said, like, we're not so much concerned, but there's a sense of urgency, he said, which is understandable because, like, you've been able to win 7 games despite having these issues over the past 3 games. But he also mentioned, like, he's seen that they're capable of more in practice. So it's one of those things, Bruce, where maybe for whatever reason they're practicing better than they're playing on the games. I think it's really been maybe a couple of individuals in coverage whose mistakes get magnified, and affect the entire unit.
It seems like everybody's making a mistake. It's different people at different times. They're not just picking on one guy. There's so many of them making mistakes. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and bash Mario after what I just said, but who knows what if they're letting out the real truth? Who knows what's going on in practice? We used to be able to go watch it and you could see, but now we can't. So, only on occasion we can go. But, he was talking about what are they playing? Are they in a cover 1, which is man? Are they in a 2 or 3? What are they doing? Yeah. He mentioned the same thing that Tremaine Mack mentioned a few weeks ago. Eye discipline is horrible. Angles. They used to practice angles. I don't know how much tackling they're practicing, if they're even allowed to do that.
Yeah, they're allowed to practice very little. They practice it a little bit, but not a whole lot.
He said it was violent when he was there, and it was because again, I was there. I watched them. They used to beat the hell out of each other. So there's things that the tackling, and it looks like our defensive backs have ice skates on, not cleats, ice skates. Somebody catches a ball, they break down to tackle them, and they leap, and the guy's gone. There's been so many of those. It's hard to fathom. I don't know. Maybe they should just be in a zone all the time. That's
what I was wondering. It's simplification, more zone, unless they're blitzing and bringing pressure. That maybe some of this is just too complicated. And obviously, they lost a lot of personnel from last year because they had you include the nickel, 5 defensive back starters from last year. Only one of them, Daryl Porter, is the same from last season. You lost the other 4 positions. So and even like You had a veteran guy in Powell transfer over. He's had some good and some not so good moments this year, but we just haven't had that consistency.
He also wanted to know why aren't we jamming receivers at the line of scrimmage? Because when his team used to do that, that would give Russell and Cortez and Greg Mark and all the other guys that were on the team an opportunity, another split second to get into the backfield. I don't know if they're able to do that. I don't know. I don't know if they have the recovery speed, if they're going to jam somebody to be able to stay. See, I don't know from that. That's why he was talking to us about all these different things. He did mention in his opinion, the scheme is too complicated for these young kids. That's what he said. Now, whether he's right or wrong, I don't know. Certainly Guidry may or may not agree or disagree, but I think something has to change because they're not going to win those playoff games playing like this. They could run the table. and beat these guys because nobody could stop our offense. And I asked you a question because I said, remember, and I said all offseason,
Yeah.
I'm telling you now, who's going to stop the offense? And then I asked you, who's our defense going to stop? And your answer was
nobody.
The
answer to both of those questions was the same.
Nobody, right? And that's scary, you know. So, look, the excitement is incredible. It's Florida State week. That rivalry has always been there, you know. None of these kids on our team were born in the 80s and 90s that saw any of those wide right ones or twos or threes, or wide left was one of them. But it's still a rivalry. Florida State does have athletes. Do I think they could beat Miami? Absolutely not. Can they make a game of it? Yeah. You know, I think they should throw caution to the wind. Screw it. Kind of like Louisville. Try to block a punt. If you get called for roughing the punter, so what? Where are they going? They're not going anywhere. Trick plays, fake this, reverses, trick, you know, all kinds of. Why not? Their defense is still pretty good.
Their defense is all right.
Horrible, though. The offense is horrible.
And that's the thing. Like, unless they figure something magically out with their offense, it's just and obviously our defense has had issues. So like,
yes, they have.
maybe Florida State will have their highest point total of the year so far, because the most they've scored in a single game was 21 points, which is pretty darn embarrassing. But the thing about their offense is, first of all, their quarterback situation is a mess. Right. I mean, obviously they started out with DJ Uiagalelei, who looked like a complete fraud coming over from the transfer portal. He got injured, but he probably would have eventually been benched anyway. He was that bad. And then they've been going between Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek. One of them is a redshirt freshman in Glenn. Kromenhoek is a true freshman. Deer in the headlights type of plays from both of these guys. And also, Bruce, their offensive line has been bad. Like their O-line, outside of their center, who's a decent player, but he's had trouble snapping some footballs. But he blocks okay. Their running game has been on a milk carton this year. So it's like Florida State, unless they can pull
and their
some
receivers can't catch a ball.
And that's the other thing, because every now and then, like Kromenhoek, Luke Kromenhoek had this throw, a perfect dime to the end zone. I think it was Hakeem Williams. Perfect. He dropped it. So like, the few times that they actually make really impressive throws, the receivers can't hold on to it. So they're
bad.
There's just been, and again, like their defense has been pretty good at times this year. They've been trending upwards the last few games. The offense has not trended upwards in any way, shape, or form. But
they have a great punter and a great field goal kicker. So
those are their MVPs.
Yeah.
Those have been.
I don't see them coming in here and beating Miami, but I would like to see Miami beat the daylights out of them, though. That would be.
And that's the thing, because and I saw this old quote. I remember when he said this back in 2022, because that was the Florida State came down to Hard Rock Stadium and they beat our brakes off 45-3 at Hard Rock Stadium. And like somebody asked Cristobal, like, about them, running up the score. And of course, Cristobal, he's not going to whine about a team running up the score, but he did mention that at some point, the shoe's going to be on the other foot, he said.
Yes, he did say that.
That might be this year.
And he's lived those games, too, so he knows, But I think that, speaking of offensive linemen, Solomon Thomas is supposed to be here.
Yeah.
I know that Mark and I will see him because we're going to be on the field before the game. So last time we were there last year, we got to see all these recruits coming out onto the field. So, hey, I'll throw him a little – I'll give him one of these, and
do it. Yeah. And then see if he throws it back. That's going to be the key.
I do this and I go like this. Yeah. But you know what? I think there's a real good flip opportunity for him.
Yeah.
I do. Because if he goes there for what the coaches are all going to be gone. And I watched some guy that does a Florida State show. Not that I watch it all the time, but he was pretty honest. He said, this is not even a program. This is horrible. And he said, and the only reason why that the coach is not going to get fired is because of the money they owe him.
Oh, for sure.
Otherwise, if you got 3 bad years out of 5, who else would be still around? But they re-upped. They gave him more money, and they can't fire him. So they're going to let him just get rid of this staff, bring in a brand new staff, I'm guessing, and hopefully they can turn it around, at least for them. I don't hope it at all, but they're in a bad spot. And the Gators have turned it around a little. I remember after the first game saying to you on the show afterwards, that I don't think the Gators are that bad. They just ran into a buzzsaw.
Yeah. They should have beaten Tennessee a couple weeks ago. They just beat Kentucky. But a couple more things I want to get to before this Florida State game, including Bruce mentioned Solomon Thomas, 5-star Florida State commit, who's expected to be at the game if Miami can maybe pull off a flip there. There's a couple of other interesting recruiting notes, including a Miami legacy has been forecast to pick the Canes. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. We're certainly not done with FanDuel. And Miami, almost a 3-touchdown favorite, 19.5-point favorites at home against the Florida State Seminoles. You want to check that out and all the other numbers at FanDuel. And NFL fans, if you haven't gotten in on this yet, you can start your season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much for making this Truth Teller Tuesday of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin does an awesome job taking you around all the big games, all the big storylines. This one, Bruce, no matter what Florida State's record is, this one is and will always be a big game. And I appreciate, Cristobal was asked a question yesterday about, whether, because you mentioned these guys are so young. They weren't born for the wide rights and the wide left even. Right. If the players understand the rivalry. And he mentioned, you'd be surprised at how much these guys understand it. I mean, obviously, the kids who are from South Florida or any part of Florida, which makes up a high percentage of this team, they grew up on that. Their parents and their coaches probably educated them on it. And I know Miami also goes out of their way to teach these guys about the history. Because, Bruce, I remember before the Florida game, Cece Mauinoa told us that they knew about the Gator flop from back in the day. They had watched documentaries about the rivalry. So I'm sure Cristobal has these guys prepared the same way for Florida State.
Plus, in the recruiting wars, it's Miami, Florida State. So they kind of get caught up in all that even before they get here. They're aware of what the rivalries are for all these teams that they're looking at, whether they're going to go to Michigan or Ohio State. That's just part of the recruiting now. So where are we with this now? What do you want to talk? Oh, who's this mystery possible? Go ahead. Let me hear the legacy. Who is it?
This is a 2026, but we're starting to look at a lot of players from that cycle. Camdin Portis. Does that name sound familiar? The last name?
Yes, I know who it is.
The son of Clinton Portis. He's in North Carolina. He's a 4-star cornerback, 6 foot, 165 pounds. Good play. We need defensive backs, even if we're looking, a couple recruiting cycles down the road. Camdin Portis has been Cristobal or I guess now Steve Wiltfong, who's with On3 now. So it's an RPM prediction. The Cristobal's trademarked by 24/7. So an RPM prediction for Miami to land Camdin Portis, who's a junior right now at high school from Myers Park in North Carolina. And by the way, Wiltfong also mentioned, Bruce, that don't sleep on Miami with Vernell Brown III, the receiver who's the Gator legacy, who's currently committed to Florida. He thinks Miami could be making up some smoke there. And I keep hearing Ben Hanks Jr. That's another possibility.
Yes, Hanks as well. In fact, they think he's got a better chance of flipping than Pickett.
Yeah, and Pickett's going to be at the game Saturday. Yes, so if you run into him, if you run into DJ, throw a few to him and see what happens.
He's easy to spot. He's tall, he's lanky. And I'll tell him about. I'm friends with his cousin, so we'll see. But and he's locked in for a few more LSU visits. But I hope they start losing LSU.
Yeah,
we have a shot at him. I don't know if we have maybe 50-50 at best.
I would at bat. I'd probably say maybe 30-70, something like that. But that's just my opinion. I mean,
So what else? So, I mentioned before, and I don't know what people's opinion of this is, but I'm going to throw it out anyway, because it's a possible guest. Mark and I are going Thursday night to watch Luther Campbell and Edison play. So, of course, we'll be down there because I know Luke, and obviously he's buddies with Caesar. So I'm going to try to get him on the show. You're okay with that, right?
Oh, I love Luke. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
I know he's a little polarizing with people, but I'm all about it. I think Luther Campbell would be great.
He's all Miami. There's people bitching
Yeah.
about Florida State, this and that, and it's he has his issues. He had some with the administration, but he bleeds orange and green. So yeah, I'm going to try to get Luke on the show. He'll do it.
That would be
That'll be
fantastic.
fun.
A couple of quick personnel notes. 'Cause a lot of people were asking me over the weekend. I didn't have an answer for it until Monday about Malik Bryant. Why didn't Malik Bryant play last week? Simple explanation. Cristobal revealed that Malik he was sick last week. He had a virus, and that's why he didn't play. Because since he had a virus, they didn't want to send him on the team plane. They could infect everybody. As it made sense. Like why? So you can expect Malik Bryant to be back this week. Now, Mario also said that we can probably, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think this accurately says, paraphrasing here, that we can probably expect to see Damari Brown return before the season's over, like back end of the season, late games before the year is out. And obviously, anytime Cristobal talks about injuries, you take it with a grain of salt. But
That's
Bruce,
for sure.
I'd love to get Damari Brown back at some point when we talk about, the inconsistencies of the secondary.
Well, after Saturday, we're 2/3 of the way through this season, through the regular season.
Yeah.
And I still think we're going to run the table, which would make me feel good because that's what I said. And I'm just looking forward to them to playing better on Saturday. I want them to be focused. I don't want any sort of, they stink, so we're going to kill these guys. I don't think that's going to happen. Although I expected us to rebound from Virginia Tech. We didn't look too good against Cal. Don't know why. After Cal, I figured we were going to destroy Louisville. We scored 52 points, but we can't stop anybody. Now I'm legitimately concerned about our defense. I don't see these guys improving that much. I think this is every game, unless the opponent is that much inferior, we're going to be locked into these nip and tuck games. But Louisville was a very good team. That's one of my notes. That quarterback was way better than I thought. He was really good.
I'm not surprised it was a shootout. I didn't have that many combined points on my bingo card. It was like, 97 combined. I wasn't quite that high, but I had a feeling, and you remember I said this last week, I had a feeling that game was going to be a shootout.
Yeah. But again, I keep thinking that they're going to turn it around defensively. I don't think they're capable. And that's kind of what Farms told us yesterday. You got all these guys. There's like 12 DBs, but who's good? They lost a lot of players, as you mentioned before. And maybe this scheme is just too difficult for them. I mean, the best player may be Porter. I don't think he's that good. He's okay.
Let me also say, I'm not saying the defense was good, but let's remember that two touchdowns were allowed basically because of special teams or an offensive turnover in the red zone, right? Where the Fletcher fumble put Louisville in the red zone immediately.
Did they score off of that? I forgot.
They did. They scored a touchdown off of that.
All right, they scored. They were down 31-17, and they got 2 in a row.
And that was right after they scored on the kickoff return, which is obviously not the defense's fault.
Right.
I mean, there were defensive players on the field, but it was a special teams unit. So they scored 7 points on special teams. They scored another 7 points that was gift wrap for them off of the offense. So again, I'm not saying the defense was good, but they weren't directly responsible for 45 points. They were directly responsible for 31 of those.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So 52-31 is kind of a blowout.
Yeah. That's one way to look at it.
You know what? Those things happen.
By the way, last thing, before we wrap it up, what did you think of? I thought that the review on the Cam Ward, clearly a forward pass incomplete, but I see a lot of people on social media who are like, they helped Miami again. Look at that. But I thought that was clear as day.
Go to YouTube. Pass. All you guys go to YouTube and check out Louisville's quarterback. What's his name? Tyler Shuck.
Tyler Shuck.
They asked him the same question. You know what he said? Incomplete pass. His arm was going forward. I have no doubt in my mind that was not a bad call. It was the right call.
Because his coach thought it was a bad call.
He's an idiot too. He's another whining baby. But the kid, I thought the kid was. I really respect him. Yeah. I hope he has. Yeah. He has an NFL career.
I like him.
He was so complimentary. That team is incredible. to watch Ward was a blessing. I mean, he was really complimentary. And he says,
Yeah.
that was definitely an incomplete pass. So when you hear it from him, all these other people bitching and moaning for what? He's on the field. He's an opponent. And he said that was correct.
Well, and even the commentators who I thought sounded really biased against Miami for most of the game, they even said that was an incomplete pass and that they were going to reverse that call.
But now we're on this trend that every time a call goes our way, and then somebody said, well, the ACC wants Miami in the playoffs, so they're not going to make these calls against them. I have a hard time believing that's true. It was an incomplete pass. Get over it.
Bruce, the ACC has had the last 20 seasons to try to help Miami. What have they ever done for us?
Nothing. The Chaney knee, they didn't change that call. Horrible call. That cost us a game, although the decision to run the damn ball cost us the game. But still, and the Virginia Tech Hail Mary, look, I still haven't seen it up close enough to make a decision. But everybody else is claiming he was Horton had his hand on the ball. Horton was out of bounds, so it's out of bounds, and that's it. So if that's their explanation, I'm not going to argue with it. I thought they never should have called a touchdown at the very beginning. But then I asked somebody, and they said, you have to make a call. You just can't say we don't know. Can you?
Yeah, you have to make a call. Yeah,
so
you're
they
right.
Called it a touchdown, but they didn't know.
That'll end our venting session for the day. Huge thank you and shout out to the truth teller. I love what you said at the top about Cristobal and everything.
I hope that goes viral because I believe in my heart that he deserves a lot of recognition and stop with the negativity towards him.
That was great. So yeah, guys, make sure if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. Throw those U's up.
Get rid of these guys. Get rid of these guys. Whoa!
We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.